Yo, guys, what is good? Welcome back to FL Teams, week number 3 with the former collegiate quarterback himself. I feel like we should be like broadcast partners because you're the former collegiate quarterback, so you can bring like the color commentary. But we're here today with Vaughn Sykora. Vaughn, this is an exciting week, man. Not only do we got Tulane football, versus USF, our Bulls this weekend taking on the Tulane Green Wave. It's the first time the Bulls are going to be back in Tampa in a month, which is very exciting. Hopefully, let's have a rocking crowd here on Saturday. And another exciting thing is we're going to be at the game together, which is awesome. We're going to be covering the game in tandem. Vaughn, you're going to do some of the break down really the game itself in terms of the schematics and some of the plays that end up happening during the game. I'm going to try to break it down just kind of in general, just kind of recap it a little bit as well. So we're gonna have a lot of coverage for you guys here on Saturday. It's gonna be a fun day Saturday, man. 4 o'clock homecoming. Like there's a lot of exciting things going on here Saturday, and the return for the USF Bulls here to Tampa.
Yeah, big week this week. I'm super excited. As they talked about in the presser, first time in 35 days that this Bulls team is going to be able to be at home.
Yeah.
Obviously, the game against ECU got moved to Boca, so that wasn't able to be a home game. But big week, especially coming off. We've been waiting for a long time for this team to show some fight, and finally against Cincy, they showed it, and hopefully that'll continue this week when we're at Ray J for the game against Tulane.
And finally, the team actually got it started out hot. Finally. It was really the most complete game I've seen a USF team play in a while, maybe since 2019, since the Charlie Strong era. It really was one of the better games that I've seen from this USF team, and I give credit, man. They battled, they were battled ready, and I mentioned to you too going into this game, maybe this is a team that they bring a different energy this past weekend against Cincinnati, it being their final time in Cincinnati, as a power or group of 5 team. So, pretty big, substantial step forward, if you will, for this team, especially going up against a Tulane team that don't slouch on them either, man. They're going to be a very good team heading into this upcoming weekend. But we got a lot to talk about. We want to talk about this Cincy game, obviously, to kick things off, as we always do. Vaughn will actually be taking over some of the preview article for this week's upcoming game. I will be out of town the next couple of days, so just going to kind of step myself away a little bit, and then I'll be back on Saturday doing the coverage. But Vaughn, you'll be covering the Tulane game on Saturday, or for the preview game at least, or the preview article, I should say. But kind of going into the Cincinnati game, man, as we mentioned, this was really a game where the Bulls fired on all cylinders. They had a fantastic opportunity to, really win this game. But unfortunately, a lot of things just didn't go their way. A lot of, bad field position. The team got banged up a lot. We lost one of our big offensive linemen as well, which was unfortunate during this game. Just a really tough day for the Bulls, but also a game where you could take it away and look at it and say, this team really had a great opportunity to win, and it would have been a massive win for this program, especially with the Jeff Scott era.
I agree, and I watched the post game, or I'm sorry, this week's presser, and Jeff Scott was pretty happy with how they played last week. He thought that was the best they had played all season, and I think that showed biggest in the rush game. All year long, we've been talking about this team's weakest unit is probably the O-line. Struggled all year, hasn't really gotten a good push, but Saturday they actually rushed for 224 yards. Scott considered that a big success. I do as well. Once you get that run game going, the pass opens up so much better. It makes it so much easier for the quarterback to make easier decisions, especially when the box isn't, or I'm sorry, when the box is loaded and they bring all those linebackers down and it leaves those DBs in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, wasn't enough to get it done. Jeff Scott, one of his big quotes from this week is, "This USF team just got his 3rd PhD in adversity." So that's one way to say that you're 1-5, but it's also a good point saying this team has been going through it and they're so young that all this adversity they faced will hopefully come to fruition in the coming weeks. But against Cincinnati, couldn't get it done. Obviously had that tough 4th down towards the end. I saw a great breakdown by Seth Varnador on the Daily Stampede, breaking down that final play where, once again, Bohannon maybe not making the right decision. We had an RPO, the running back, coming out of the backfield who we threw it to, and couldn't convert that short 4th down. But Bohannon did have what looked like a counter to the other side, which he could have pulled.
Yep.
He didn't decide to do that. USF lost the game, but did Bohannon maybe make the wrong choice on that fourth down, which is something we've been seeing all year, that inconsistent decision making.
Yeah.
But other than that one fourth down, overall on the day, he did a much better job, and the offense looked much better in the first half, which is something we've been screaming, please come out better in the first half.
Yeah.
Please come out better in the first half. Please come out better in the first half. And this week, I don't know what they did, if they did anything different, but much, much better. Actually jumped out to a 10-0 lead until Cincy started getting some stuff firing offensively.
Yeah, it was a fantastic, it was really a fantastic performance for this USF team. I mean, really nothing to take away really out of it, other than in terms of, again, I mean, nothing bad to take away, I should say, out of it for this USF team. I got to be specific there, because again, this was really the most complete game we've seen this team play. Bohannon was great on the run. He was very, very, it's what we wanted to see out of Bohannon and what these fans have been clamoring for. We wanted to see Bohannon show what he did when he was with Baylor, and we're seeing it now kind of coming together, especially here in conference play, where he's really throwing the ball well. He's making better decisions with the football as well. There have been a couple obviously decisions that he's made that are still off a little bit, but that's every quarterback. You'll make those bad passes whenever you're under center, and especially with how weak this O line is. We mentioned last week, this is a weak O line, and when you lose another O lineman to an injury, especially an injury that you're out for the season, it makes things tough. So, I give credit where credit is due, man. Jeff Scott's done a phenomenal job, getting this team prepared for this past Saturday. The mistakes, there were a few mistakes, there were a few lucky breaks for this team as well. Ben Bryant goes down, so you don't have a quarterback. Obviously, it really never came into fruition. And if Ben Bryant would have gone down earlier in the game, maybe the game would have ended differently, or maybe it would have been a blowout by Cincinnati, because Ben Bryant did not play a very good game at all. He looked absolutely horrible, and the defense played very well over the weekend. They had a field day, and that's another thing we wanted to see too, Vaughn, is the defense show up, and they did. And I was very happy about that as well.
Yeah, especially with the talent disparity between these two teams. We can talk however we want to talk as a Bulls fan, but the fact of the matter is Cincinnati is just a higher level program than USF is right now. But USF played at their level in a place that's really, really tough to play in Cincinnati, who has really developed a great home atmosphere there. So they came out fast, but in the second half, it was slowing down a little bit. Bohannon had a much better first half passing than he did second half.
Yep.
And so, like I said, once again, some of the decisions started breaking down. As I mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, a lot of what USF does on offense is really reading one or two guys every single play. So Jeff Scott's really trying to make it easy on Bohannon. And I thought this week it's an improvement. And a lot of what you see on Twitter is Jeff Scott fired this, Jeff Scott fired that. And they're on Twitter for a reason. We're here talking about it for a reason. We have a realistic view. We have a realistic view of how football program, and it's more than just what we see on the field. And Jeff Scott needs time for these guys to be able to be built into men and better football players. And this week is a step in the right direction. And hopefully we continue that against Tulane. But I don't really think you can take anything but a moral victory, like you said, from that Cincinnati game.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. It was definitely, again, a well-played game. I actually, in the post-game presser, you mentioned, or you mentioned about as well with that RPO play. I was going to mention too that in the post-game presser, Jeff Scott had no comment on it. He just said he's got to watch the film over and see what ended up coming out of that play. So obviously that was one of the things with that post-game presser that he had mentioned. I don't know if he came out with anything during this week's presser. I didn't ever got a chance to actually watch his weekly presser this week. So I'll have to get into seeing if he talked about that or discussed that at all. And another thing is too, man, Jeff Scott was very emotional post-game. In his press conference, got very emotional talking about this team and how tough this team has battled, really. And, it's a great sign to see, like, emotionally, that Jeff Scott really does, care for this program. And we know that, Jeff Scott says all the right things that you want to hear from a head coach. It's only a matter of time, man, that Jeff Scott is going to get things clicking. Like, it just seems like he's just going to get things clicking. But when you have 26 guys or however many guys have been injured and have been hit with this injury bug that's been going around this team, it's tough, man. One of the guys literally jokingly said, hey, Jeff Scott, did you walk under a ladder before the season starts? Because it seems like you had very much not much luck. And he he recounted a time where apparently, like in high school, he had a bunch of high school kids going down with injury, and he said that was exactly a similar situation that we're having right now with USF. So it's been tough, man. This team has been hit with a lot of injuries. Like, you got to take that into account. Like, when you have 26 guys out and you have 14 guys, they said, who were, scholarship players who are not playing on the field, that's tough, man. Not having those guys are huge.
Yeah, it's so big, and a lot of times you can say, "Hey, look at all these injuries. What's going on in the strength and
Yeah.
conditioning program?" But I think the most common injury I think I saw in a tweet this week is a sprained wrist.
Yeah.
So, or I'm sorry, a broken wrist.
Yeah.
So that's just completely unlucky, and you can't really do anything about that to prevent a sprained wrist. What are you going to do? It's just a completely random event that apparently has just been happening over and over for this USF team. So a lot of unluckiness, a lot of adversity, like Jeff Scott said. But all this USF team's been doing is continuing to fight back, and it's good to show the players are in good spirits. The seniors are continuing, hey, these last 6 games, let's make sure we're really pressing and finishing up strong. Bohannon seemed calm at the presser, and they're all seem committed towards building towards a better future at USF, whatever that takes.
Yeah,
But,
definitely. Sorry about that, buddy.
no, you're good. Got to take it one game at a time, and so far that's all we can do.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I think that's what Jeff Scott's been, kind of preaching in a lot of these press conferences. And I'm very happy to hear that from him. And again, I think, last week, again, proved, I think, again, that Jeff Scott is a very good head coach. Like, I think Jeff Scott knows what he's doing with this program. I think this team is a very competitive team when they can play their best ability possible. This is a very competitive football team. And I think they are a competitive football team when they're at their peak. I mean, I would say one thing is that I'm still concerned about is, trying to get the ball out to the receivers. And, you look last week, we saw Xavier Weaver had a big week, obviously Jimmy Horn the week after. So, you get your, receivers who are getting big weeks, but they're not really, dispersing it out to other players. Like Jimmy Horn only had 5 yards last week. I want to see more of a kind of a duo, tandem, maybe getting 100 yards each. I mean, I know it's very hard to do, especially in this offense where it's not a firing offense, if you will, yet. I do think it could be, but I would like to see, decent, maybe a touchdown for Horn and Weaver, try to mix it up a little bit, try to get these guys working and such, and really create that dynamic duo, if you will, for this receiving core, because that's going to, confuse a lot of these defenses, man. When you have 2 really good receivers and you pass it to both of them and you kind of mix it together and stuff with both of those players, it makes things really tough on the defense to, kind of predict where you're going to end up passing the ball. So I hope to see maybe more of that. And you also got Brian Batty, who's, a good running back. He got banged up a little bit this weekend as well. But again, another very exciting weekend for the Bulls in terms of, making a step forward. And you like to see that because they've really improved the last 2 weeks in conference play.
I agree. And starting with those receivers, that was one of my biggest notes, or one of my biggest notes was only 1 catch from Jimmy Horn. Like, this guy is such an explosive playmaker. You need to be getting him the ball on screens, getting him the ball on jets, any way that we can get the ball in his hands. Obviously, Weaver had a great week with 7 catches for 112 yards. That's absolutely huge. But something we've been talking about all year, the consistency. We can do it 1 week, but can we do it the next week again? So I would like to see from this offense, let's get these receivers who are both very talented. Jimmy Horn Jr. and Weaver are both very explosive guys, but can we consistently get them the ball? Because that's really what offense is all about, is getting the ball in your best player's hands as much as possible. And when Jimmy Horn's only coming out of a game, and it could be because Cincinnati saw the big game he had last week and they decided to commit some more coverage to him. That's completely possible, but he still needs more touches than that. He is such an explosive player. And like you were saying, when you have multiple guys, when Batti's going and Weaver's going and Horn's going, this offense can hit a whole nother level. But when only one guy's excelling at a time, it's much easier for the defense to catch on. Absolutely.
Yeah, and remember, this was a tough week too. This is the first coldest game that we've had all season, and this probably will be the coldest game that we're going to play all season. Like, there were so many factors going into this game. We had terrible field position at some of those drives that we had for this team. Like, there was just so many things that you could say, like, this Bulls team had their backs against the wall, and they fought. I mean, you mentioned it again. They fought their way through this game, and again, credit where credit is due, man. This was a well put together performance by the Bulls, and a great way to jump into this week, which really is an intriguing week for the Bulls. Like, it really is. It's the most intriguing week the Bulls have had I would say probably since that first week against BYU, where people going into that game saying, "Hey, maybe BYU or USF has something here this season," and then I would say maybe also too after the Florida game as well. Maybe the USF Bulls could possibly knock off Louisville after a great performance against the Gators. So this is really an exciting week this week. You got Tulane coming into town again. We mentioned 35 days since the last Bulls game at home, so we know this team will be very excited to play back at Ray J again. I know I'm very excited to get back at Ray J again to get to watch the Bulls play because now there's only a couple more games left. You got this game, SMU and UCF at home in Tampa. So only a few games left to play here in Tampa until the season starts winding down. But this is an exciting game, man. This is a Tulane team that's very, very good. Um, a little bit similar to, I would say, an ECU. It feels like in terms of their passing attack, they got a great quarterback in Michael Pratt. This is by the way, this is great conference for the quarterbacks. It feels like here a lot of great quarterbacks in this American Athletic Conference. But what's your take on this game, man? Tulane and USF, and what could be a game where maybe the Bulls bring out the juice a little bit. They bring out the energy that they did last week, and maybe we get a pissed off Bulls team here heading into this weekend.
That's what I'm hoping, because after the UF game, next game came out and played not so well. So once again, with that consistency thing, hopefully after a great fighting week, come out and do the same thing the next week. I wish it was against an easier team. This Tulane team should probably be ranked. They're 5-1. They have a win over 17 Kansas State. They're a serious program. And their quarterback, as Dylan mentioned, Michael Pratt, he's an absolute stud. He's a 3-year starter for them. Calm, makes the right play, pocket passer type guy. He was a preseason Maxwell Award finalist, or candidate, I should say, for one of the best QBs in the country. I think personally, it's my opinion that this is the best QB that USF's played so far. Anthony Richardson is a great quarterback, but what Pratt can do with his arm could pick apart this USF team, which is something that is pretty scary, especially considering the type of performance that Ehlers had a couple of weeks ago with 6 touchdowns. And then flipping to defensively for Tulane, they're tough as well.
Yeah.
Using Ehlers once again as an example, they held him to 1 touchdown and 2 picks last week. So the DBs are definitely going to be, the DBs for Tulane played up to snuff, and Bohan's going to have a tough time this week. So the USF's once again going to have to come out hot in the first half if they want to have a shot, because this Tulane team is pretty serious this year.
Yeah, this is a very good Tulane team. I mean, we beat Kansas State on the road, and they're ranked right now. I mean, it's a telltale sign. You know, the team's doing something right. I mean, again, they lost to Southern Miss. It's a weird game, anyways. Southern Miss is a weird team to begin with in terms of their football program. They have good teams, and sometimes they have bad teams at Southern Miss. But regardless of that, yeah, this is a very tough Tulane team. And as you mentioned, man, this is probably the toughest passing quarterback that we've had to play, because we have played some very tough rushing. You played Jaron Hall, who's a very good rushing quarterback. Anthony Richardson's another dynamic quarterback, and Malik Cunningham is one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NCAA. So this is the toughest passing attack that we've had to play all season, in terms of playing here in conference play even as well. So this is really going to be an interesting matchup, because, you know, last week we thought Ben Bryant would be an interesting matchup because Ben Bryant's a good quarterback, and he stunk it up last week, and he ended up getting injured, which are, you know, my thoughts are out to Ben Bryant. Hopefully he's okay for this week. I believe he tweaked himself a little bit. I believe it was a concussion, maybe. I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, actually. I think he hit his head on the ground, and he actually had to get taken out of the game. So if I remember correctly, it was like a weird concussion where he hit off the ground, but nobody actually ended up hitting him. But regardless of that, man, this is gonna be a very tough matchup. Again, Michael Pratt's a good player. He relies on his tight end. We've seen it in some of the games that he's played. Relies on his big tight end, Tyrick James. And I guess that will kind of lead into our key players of this game. We'll begin with Tulane. I'm going to go with Tyrick James here. 4 touchdowns for Tyrick James, 101 yards. Maybe not as many yards as you would hope for that many touchdowns, but he's been kind of their red zone threat, if you will, for this season here for Michael Pratt on the year.
Yeah, he's an absolute stud. And one more note on Pratt before I move on to my guy is,
for sure,
he really takes what the defense gives him, which is one of the scariest things that a college quarterback can really do, is he moves the ball all over the field. 6 players have over 12 catches on the year. So that tells you that he can go short to the running back, make the play to the tight end over the middle, throw it deep to the receiver on the outside. He can really make any throw that you want him to make, and he really spreads it all over the field. So the defense really has to be on their toes. But I went with Tyjae Spears, who's their lead running back. He has 6 touchdowns on the season. Yeah. He leads the Green Wave in rushing. He's a 5'11" back. He makes some great cuts in the backfield, and he's going to have to be a guy that USF bottles up, or else he could break a few for quite a few yards.
That's what's scary, man, about this rushing attack is they got 12 total touchdowns this year on the rushing attack. That's like very nerve-wracking, especially when you got a good passing attack and Michael Pratt. That could make for a very, very good duo, but good dynamic, if you will, in terms of the offensive game, and really a offensive fire. Yeah, very unpredictable. For sure. This is going to be a very tough game for the Bulls. We'll now go to the Bulls offensive key player. I'm going to begin with you, Vaughn. Who do you have as your offensive key player? We obviously have talked a lot about Batty. We talked about, I believe, one week we said I forgot one week you did. I think you end up saying Xavier Weaver one week, I believe.
I might have. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, me neither.
For this week, I have Bohannon, who we obviously talk about him all the time. The quarterback's, of course, going to be the main guy who gets the praise and the main guy who gets all of the shellacking. And when a team's 1-5, that's how it's going to be. But Bohannon needs to come out, consistently make the right reads, keep his team calm, understand that he's up a tough he has a tall task here with this Tulane team, and that he needs to have his team ready to go, and that he needs to make the right decisions. I mean, when it's right for Bohannon, as we saw in that beautiful corner route to the back of the end zone. Bohannon can throw a gorgeous ball, but can he do it consistently for the rest of conference play is yet to be seen. And I really hope so, because when he's going and this offense is going, it's a whole lot of fun. But when it's bad, it can be really bad.
Yeah, it can be very bad. Yeah, it's tough sometimes when the team isn't going a little bit. But yeah, I'm gonna go Bohannon as well. That's pretty much an easy pick here. We've talked about some of the key offensive players, some of your skill players, if you will, in terms of receiver and running back. We obviously know what Batty can do. We know what Weaver can do and Horn can do. I'm gonna go Bohannon as well. I think Bohannon needs to have another kind of game here that he's had the last couple of weeks. Again, even if the team doesn't win, if he could put together a solid performance like we've seen the last 2 weeks, I think that's a good sign from USF fans. And I think, it shows that he is worth that transfer, having him come over from Baylor and really bringing his talents here to USF. I think, early on, a lot of people had a lot of criticism. People were wondering if he could be the next great quarterback at this position. And don't get me wrong, he hasn't thrown for 300 yards, and I don't expect him to, not the way the offense is run at this point. But I do expect him to improve, and I expect him to get better. And I think if he could have another solid week that he's had, I'll be very happy. And one thing you mentioned too with keeping calm, that I asked him on Saturday, I asked Bohannon, I said, you played in a lot of tough environments. Last week was a tough environment as well with playing at Cincinnati, and you played at a lot of Big 12 environments. But how do you keep your composure and the offensive composure, especially with having unfavorable field position? And he just said, it's got to keep being myself, out on during practice. And I think that was a great answer, because at the end of the day, if you're not the same person that you are at practice during the game, it won't translate. So that's a great point that Bohannon made, and I'm excited to see how he can play here, especially at home, which will be very helpful to play at home in front of the home crowd against this tough Tulane defense.
Absolutely. And then as far as defense for the Bulls this week, my player to watch is Tamarcus Simpson, who's a corner for the Bulls. He's a Sickles product, so hometown guy. Another thing we love to see at USF. He led the team in tackles last week with 8, and not exactly something you want to see with your corner leading your team in tackles, but it is what it is as far as last week. Also forced a fumble. So he's been coming up big, especially for a guy who was mainly a special teams guy last year. So hopefully T-Mac Simpson will show up again this week against Tulane.
I was going to say T-Mac. That's the nickname right there for our boy T-Mac Simpson there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what he can do. He's had a pretty good season this year. He's done a very good job defensively this season. So excited to see as well. I'm actually going to do a repeat this week. I need to see a big game from this guy, Antonio Greer. I don't know what's happened to Antonio Greer. He hasn't shown up, it feels like, in the last couple of weeks of the season. I need to see a big game out of Antonio Greer this week. I'm going to keep it here with him, because I need to see that pick from Antonio Greer, the graduate student. He's a veteran on this defense. This could be an opportunity. We saw the defense ball out last week. We did. The defense, had a pretty good week last week against Ben Bryant. And Ben Bryant was not on his game last week. And if they could get Michael Pratt off his game early on in this game, don't be surprised. It could be a repeat of last week. And with it being at home, you might get the advantage. And you got the referees possibly that could possibly, don't want to say anything, but you get that home field advantage with the referees sometimes. But I'm going to say this right now. I think Antonio Greer, if he could get a pick this weekend, I'd love to see it because Antonio Greer is a veteran on this defense and he needs to make a splash because, that's what veterans do. They make splashes. And I think he needs to make a splash here quick. And I would love to see a pick this weekend.
Yeah, and also a big story this week. Unfortunately, Antonio Greer lost his father this week. So hopefully prayers are out to him and thoughts are out to him. Hopefully
and I was gonna say one thing too is we've seen players respond off of having family members pass away, and my thoughts as well to Antonio Greer's father. But we've seen Quan Alexander for the Bucks. He had one of the greatest performances I've seen from a Bucks player when his father passed away. So we've seen players kind of respond differently when a family member passes away, and they play kind of for their family members. So that'll be amazing to see him get a pick.
Yeah, that would be a great moment. So hopefully we could see that Saturday.
Oh, definitely, for sure. We'll transition to Tulane now because you're Tulane key player. I think we might have the same player because I do know who I'm going to take with this. I think this is pretty self-explanatory.
Well, for offense, I already pretty much went over it with Tyjae Spears, but my main defensive guy was Macon Clark, who is their safety. Yeah. Actually led their team in tackles last year with 74. Yeah. Absolute havoc wrecker. Has 2 interceptions and a forced fumble already on this year. The type of guy where it's like, where's Clark at on the field? I want to stay away from him because he could be all over. He's a similar guy to the Cincinnati safety last week where he looks like he's shading to the right side of the field. You throw the ball deep left, and how did he get all the way over there? So Bohannon needs to be very wary of Macon Clark on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Macon Clark as well. I had the same exact guy, so we do have the same defense player of the week. Yeah, the kid's he's a beast, man. He's playing really good this season. As you mentioned, the 2 picks, the 2 forced fumbles. He's had a great season for this Tulane team, and you got to watch out for him defensively. And with this receiving core, if we can mix up this receiving core, man, if we could get it to both Horn and Weaver, maybe a little bit of Dollison, we've seen him as well, maybe for some of these big plays, these deep balls. This could be a very vital offense. Like this could be a very good offense for USF, but we just got to get get everything kind of mixing, if you will, for this offense. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Yeah, but I'm going to go Macon Clark as well, man. He's had a great season. He's definitely a guy to watch out for on Saturday, and it should be a very fun matchup on Saturday between Tulane and USF. So this brings us now to our predictions, Vaughn. This is a tough game, man. This is really tough because it really could go either way. Tulane's a good team. But, there's a lot of things that USF here are going in favor for, again, the 35 days, the big game over the weekend against Cincinnati, the team maybe are in a different mindset this weekend. Maybe this is the spark that USF needed to really get things going. And you got Houston the week after. Houston's kind of digressed a little bit since the loss to Tulane. They haven't been the same, it feels like, since the Tulane loss. And then you got Temple the week after, which is a very, very winnable game. Like, that's one of the most winnable games on our schedule. Compare maybe that and Howard, like, were the 2 most winnable games heading into the season. So, kind of going into this game, man, what do you see the Bulls finishing out here at the end of Saturday when that final whistle blows, when the 0 on the clock hits? Where do you see USF in terms of their score favoring here on Saturday?
Well, it's going to be tough. And one more thing to add to that, don't forget that it's homecoming. So hopefully the crowd, which has been an issue in the last couple of years with USF.
I think it's going to be a good crowd.
I agree. I think it's going to be a great crowd. USF's going to have a lot of momentum. Hopefully they can come out fast. But this Tulane team is very, very, very tough. And Michael Pratt is an absolute stud. Yeah. So I think USF's going to keep it close, all those factors. But Tulane is a very solid team. Up there, could be, no disrespect to UF, but could be the best team that they've played so far this season if they play the right way. So if I had to give you a score, I think USF keeps it pretty close. I would go Tulane 28, USF 21, and hope that USF can once again come out another week of fight, another week of, hey, maybe not a victory over
Yeah.
such a great team, but a moral victory, continuing to build towards the future. What are you seeing, Dylan?
This is a tough game, man. This is probably the toughest game I've had to pick since we've started doing this, and even like beforehand. Like I knew we were going to be Howard. That was been easy. BYU, I probably thought we would lose. The Florida game, I knew we would probably lose. Louisville, I thought we would end up losing, even though I do think we could have probably battled with them a little bit more than we did end up doing. This is tough, man. I am going to take the upset.
Let's
I
go.
I am feeling it this weekend, man. There's
Fire me up.
something, dude. There is something about this weekend. Homecoming, again. 35 days it's been since the last game we played here in Tampa. You know, you're playing for the city. You're
The stars are
playing.
aligning. I have to say, they are aligning.
They really are. Like, there's something about this weekend that I think is going to be special. I'm going 30-27 USF beating Tulane. I think it's going to come down to the wire. Maybe a late field goal wins it for the Bulls, but I think they could do it. Like, I really do think this team is capable of winning games. Like, I do think they can win this game if they put their mind to it and they play a good, solid 4 quarters of football and they don't, mess up in certain positions. And if they have favorable field positioning, then great. Then we would even have a better shot at, getting this W on Wednesday, or on not on Wednesday. Jesus, today's Wednesday. On Saturday. I have USF winning. This is my first prediction making USF winning a game, but I feel like the stars align this weekend. I really do. I think everything's kind of fitting in correctly to where USF's going to be, and I think USF gets the job done on homecoming.
Yeah, and I'm super excited. I hope that could be the outcome. And remember, guys, Dylan and I are going to this game, so make sure we're going to have plenty of content being pushed in throughout this whole weekend. So make sure to stay tuned.
Yeah, this will be your first time meeting Jeff Scott.
Very excited.
I'm gonna say I don't know if you can now ask him for the recruiting sheet though. He might be cool with now Bohannon staying there. I think.
We'll have to see.
Well, because I know that was the first thing you said on the first episode. I remember you saying that you might have to, when you go to this game, you might have to put in the recruiting sheet, if you will, to try out for the team. So luckily, I will say, Bohannon has turned out okay, because Bohannon's a very good, solid player, and I want to see him do well for this program. So
absolutely.
But yeah, we're gonna have a lot of coverage. We're gonna have the post game press conferences with Jeff Scott and the select amount of players that will be in the post-game press conference on Saturday. We're going to have our articles out, obviously, for us individually. So a lot of stuff's going to be pushed out on Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll try to get some on-the-field stuff as well, post-game, or not post-game, but last couple of minutes of the game, and maybe even some pre-game stuff as well. We got a lot of stuff planned. It's going to be a really, really fun Saturday afternoon. Homecoming, it's going to be packed. It's going to be awesome, man. It's not going to be packed. It's not gonna be upper deck packed, is what I'm saying. But
packed for USF.
It's packed, yeah, packed for USF. Yeah, the upper deck for USF is the second deck, like the second level.
For sure.
So, but yeah, it's gonna be a fun weekend, man. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So USF and Tulane on Saturday. Those are our predictions. Those are our kind of breakdown of this game. We will see you guys Saturday for USF Tulane. Peace out, guys, and thanks for joining us here on FL Teams.